Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have a very important upload to share with you. Not only is it important to me, but it's important to many of you. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, my merch displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Before we get into today's upload, I just want to share with everyone, Victor and I were working on something very important to both of us prior to his decline, rapid decline of health. I talked to Scott a couple days ago, Friday, and he's still the same. He's not getting any better. So I decided that in memory of Victor, I realized not only do I have every single hunt that he's done, but I have all of the Q&As. And I am going to compile everything, and I'm either going to do an audiobook or I'm going to sit diligently and write my own book in memory of Victor. So that's the news I've got. For those of you who are going to hate on the idea, good for you. For those of you who are excited about it, so am I. Let's get into the very first hunt Victor has ever shared with us. No, I said the very first hunt he ever shared with us, not his very first hunt. San Leandro hunt, April 18th, 1992. Dogman kills 2 fugitives on the run. Well, it was a slow day, and just about every agent was in the office enjoying the coffee and some bad jokes. The CO calls me in and asks if Ellis is ready for some field training. I reply he is the youngest man here right now, but this agent can really shoot. I remind the CO what happened when he was put before Raphael, that he'd passed out. But on account of his shooting ability, we did hire him. He is very fast, accurate with a handgun, deadly accurate. We talk a few more minutes, and I call him in to join the conversation. He is agreeable to everything me and my CO are talking about. So we are supposed to report to the San Leandro Police Department to pick up our file, which is not normal operating procedure. I tell him to saddle up, and he tells me he needs to go to the barracks and get his equipment. Everyone roars with laughter. Not so much at him, but at me. It's going to be a babysitting trip. At this time, I still had 2 or 3 ahead of me in rank, but I was trying to make my way through them as best as I could without busting everyone's buns. He finally makes it back about 25 minutes later, and we head to the helicopter pad and take off. Tell him to get comfortable and rest best he can, because when we hit the ground, we are going to be moving fast and will not slow down. All he wants to do is talk and know what to expect after we get on the ground. I try to keep it together and keep my cool with this young Marine. I explain what I expect out of him, and he is paying almost too close attention. He reads my lips and hears me, also absorbing everything I say. He's like a robot. After 4 hours of this, dark comes upon us. He finally banks off, gets into position to sleep, and looks like a young kid lying there. It make you think of your own kids back at home. Finally, sleep came for me, and I felt us landing. we were putting down to refuel before carrying on with the rest of our trip. I got out of the cargo area, and Ellis slept right through the whole ordeal, even starting the Chinook up and taking off. I didn't see how he could ever do that. It was well after daylight when we landed the next morning, somewhere around 10:40 hours, and they had a car waiting for us. We put our gear in the back seat and were wearing our weapons. When we enter the police station, we are met by the chief of police, Ballard, and game warden, Brian Johnson, who had a file and was going to take us to the scene of the attack. So I ask why the police are involved. He states that this started out as a robbery gone bad at a grocery mart late in the day, that a male entered the grocery and was going to rob it. His female accomplice was already in the store, but no one knew she was with him. So there had been 2 officers in the store, off duty when all of this went down. They confront him, and now he is outgunned. He grabs a hostage. The hostage is his accomplice, unknown to the police, so they back off. It's almost dark outside now, and he and she are making their way out of the door slowly. Other units are on the way, but do not get there before they reach the outside and are able to make it under 580, going east on foot into Chabot Park. They then call in the dogs and the game warden to assist in the search for the fugitives. Brian and the state patrol took over and explained they were traveling about 1 mile due east and was nearing Redwood Road when they were attacked by dogs, as best as he could tell. That's where the female body was, and they had men there with her, standing guard to make sure they didn't come back and feed on the body or anyone happens by. It's a good place for homeless people to camp. I ask about the man. His pistol is lying there empty, but we found nowhere. He crossed the road, and he was hurt because we found he was losing blood where he crossed. But we have not tracked him any further because we don't know what we are dealing with. I say dogs, but I really don't think dogs could do this to a human body in any way. Brian said the police chief injected and said, "I'm sure he doesn't want to hear any Indian tales, Brian." I took Brian aside and asked what he thought it might be, and he said it was a dogman that his grandfather had taught them all about him. There were just a few pictures in the file, but I could tell by looking at the photos that he was right in what he was telling me, and he knew what had killed the female and probably was going to kill the man. We rejoined the chief, and I told him I needed to put out where they went under the interstate, 580. Brian said, "That's where I come in now. I'm your ride." And I said, "Good." We got out to his truck, and I tell him to give me a few minutes and ask how far we are from where they went under the interstate. He says roughly 7 minutes. I complete going through the file and ask him to start driving and hand the file to Ellis to read and tell him he has 7 minutes to come up to speed on the case. He actually got close to 11 minutes due to traffic lights. We park the truck, and myself and Ellis get out and get ready to start the tracking process on this pair of fugitives and which way they went. I asked Brian to drive around to the other end and go to the body, meet us there, but not to come to the west side of the body till after we come and check everything out. Move everyone to the east side of the body and keep them there. Have an ambulance there so they can pick her up once we're finished. He says okay, and heads on his way as we do as well. We enter Chabot Park, just south of the zoo, as you could hear the animals making their noises and all the sounds associated with the zoo. I told Ellis to settle down and quit shaking like he was, and he stated it was exciting that everyone said I was the one to learn from, and that he wanted to read my file about Little America and how I survived. I told him let's clean this up and pick up a track on these people, and then we'll move forward after that." He shook his head. Just as soon as we dropped out of sight from everyone, I asked him to stop, turned him around, and pulled and checked his pistol. Nothing was in the chamber. Then I checked his rifle. Nothing in that chamber, and I asked why. He said he was not hunting, and I informed him that once we left that truck, we were actively hunting, which he couldn't believe. I loaded both of his weapons, replaced the pistol in his holster, and said, "Don't ever forget how to use it. Keep it ready as always." Handed him his rifle back with the safety on and told him the same thing. Told him to take point, pick up their trail, and lead me to her body slowly, and to listen to my instructions to a T. I stayed maybe 10 yards behind him till he picked up their trail. I'd been watching their trail for almost 50 yards prior to him picking it up and pointing it out to me. We had traveled into some sanded area, and I pulled young Ellis to the side. He knelt down and waited on me to give him a signal or a verbal command to move on. After about 3 minutes, finding 2 different sets of Dogman tracks, I let him know it's okay to move on. We move about 100 yards, and he throws up his fist and drops to one knee. I freeze dead in my tracks, and he motions to me forward and low. I do, so he points out 3 sets of Dogman tracks and a .40 caliber handgun casing. I put a rock on top of the casing, pat him on the shoulder. He grinned ear to ear, and I pointed forward with 2 fingers. Another 200 yards, and up came his fist again. This kid really knows how to run point. Only will he be able to run it under pressure of real targets. Now we are up to 4 targets, and I'm out here with an agent who has never fired his weapon at a living target other than human beings. Yeah, he has 12 confirmed kills, but that still doesn't prove himself against monsters. After passing out in front of Raphael, also he locates 2 more casing. So these poor folks know these creatures are after them. While he is setting small rocks on top of the casings, I'm looking around in the brush to see if I can find any blood, but there is none at all. So he's not shooting at them, and he's not hitting them. And these creatures are running all around them. Why is he not shooting at them more than what he is? We have only found 3 casings so far. There should have been 10 to 12 minimum in a .40 cal mag, I'd think. I've never owned a .40 cal, so I don't know anything about them. So now it's getting later in the day, and we reach the body. Brian has everyone a good 30 yards east of the body, with the ambulance sitting on ready to pick this poor lady up. So as we study the scene, I can tell that Ellis is turning a little green around his gills, and asks him to take a walk and see how far it is to where he crossed the road. Told him to watch himself. After he returned and reported back, I had talked with Brian, and it looks like she was running behind the man. She tripped, then 1, maybe 2 got on her back, and 1 or the other penetrated her aorta, and all the blood drained out from her in a matter of minutes, plus 1 or both slashed her back twice. I told one of the officers on scene that the body can be picked up and that there is no longer a need for them to stay in the area once the body was gone, just to clean up all the tape, remove everything that they could. They said that they would comply with the orders and leave and report back to the chief. I thanked them one and all, and once again, young Ellis asked why I did this after we had left them. And I asked him, "Are you any better than any of those men that were working on a hot-ass beat to make a living for their families and put their lives on the line day after day?" He answers no, and said he would be back in a few minutes. I told him just to catch up. We stopped at Brian's truck, and I asked Brian if he had any plans for tonight, tomorrow, and the next few days till we found this guy's body. He replied, I thought you'd never ask. I told him that once we found the other body, his part would be over, and he would not be able to continue on with us as we would go after the dogmen. He said that he understood fully. Brian opened the back door and set out a small pack, and said it had everything in it he would need to go with us. He had 2 boxes of .357 H&H Magnum ammunition rifle and a .357 Magnum pistol, and then the basic camping supplies and a 3-day supply of food. We were just about to walk away, and here comes young Ellis, and he wants to take lead. I say no this time, and he starts to question me, then sees that Brian is tagging along and thinks better of it before he says anything about it. I take point. I put Brian 5 yards behind me, Ellis 10 yards behind Brian. I tell everyone to keep their eyes peeled. I shoot northeast and south. Brian shoots north and south. Ellis, you'll be shooting northwest and south. Everyone's got your orders. It's now dark. Brian has his own night vision goggles. I asked Brian where we were heading, and he said if we headed northeast, that'd take us into some fairly large mountains for quite a long while before we hit any type of civilization. If we stayed due east, we would travel towards San Ramon, California. I tracked this man till just after 1:20 hours, and the howls started. We figured that they smelled us, and I set us up on a tight perimeter. How was I going to explain having a game warden on a hunt with me? I knew this was not going to end well for me. We all hunkered down 20 yards out in front of everyone else. I figured I was good for 4, especially back then. I was much faster, and everything I did was much quicker, smoother movements back then. The night wore on, and nothing happened. It never went totally quiet, and they never approached us that night, but I realized another problem with Ellis that night. When he fell asleep, he snores, and snores very badly. That was something else he was going to have to talk to the CO about. Things are mounting up against him, and he was just so likable, it was crazy. How you had to like him after you were around him for just a little while. I was up before light and had some coffee on, and Brian ended up shaking Ellis awake and getting him stirring. He finally did. He said we woke him up too early to start the day. I laughed and said, "What are you going to do when you have to go 3 or 4 days straight without sleeping at all?" "We almost had to do that last night." He went ahead and got up, stowed his gear, and was ready to leave out whenever I was, and I stated it would be after good daylight, so that we didn't miss anything that we could have missed in the dark. I know he was still on his feet at that point, and he said, "How do you know this?" And I shined my light between his feet, and there was his track with blood spots in it. I explained you always have to be on the lookout for these types of signs, the victims and the predators. They're all around here, but no one said anything about them last night before I put us on formation. Brian said he saw the tracks last night, but figured since we were on the trail there was no use of saying anything about them. Why should we say anything came out of Ellis's mouth? And I snapped and let him know that you're paying attention. I'm not out babysitting you like everyone else in the office thinks I'm doing right now. Why would they think that? He shouts back. Because of your actions. We don't make you get up at any certain hour, and yes, you can report when you want to, but you need to look at what we do and what we are up against. How many men applied for this job and are turned away? Who really gets to hunt monsters for a living? Sure, you can't go out and brag about it and to anyone. They'd think you're crazy till your back looks like mine. Then you can say you fought a monster and came out ahead. I told him, look, nobody wanted to go on the hunt with you, and I'll keep your mouth shut. Never said one way or another. I was third in line to go, and I knew when I was called in that you were going to be tagging along. I never said a word about it. I bragged on how good of a shot you were, and I did remind the CO what happened when we put you in front of Raphael, and I don't think you have the backbones for this. All the time Brian is staring at me with more and more questions building up, and I can see them building. So I turn to Brian and I tell him, Brian, I can't answer any of your questions you were going to ask, so please don't ask. He tips his hat and continues to listen. I then said that after we find his body, that Brian will drop out of our little team and call in and get help to get the body out. And we will continue till we catch up with the Dogman, and we will take the 4 of them out. The sun's up now, and it appears to be a sunny April day in California. I'm standing about 40 yards from Brian and Ellis. Ellis finally comes by and says, I'm sorry. I tell him, no problem. Let's just work together as one machine instead of 2 different ones, and do our duty. Hoorah, sir! And off he goes, thinking he's feeling better about himself now, but also thinking he will be high maintenance to keep motivated and going in the right direction. We leave out, me on point and Ellis in the middle, Brian on our tail. We have turned almost due north, and Brian has picked up on this as we start to enter a highly rocky area. Much easier to track the man now with his blood droplets showing on the rocks, also a good place to get ourselves ambushed. So I tighten the group up. As we continue to move forward, I spot the man's foot and stop everyone and ask everyone to look closely and see what they see. Both of them spot the foot within a couple of minutes. I put them back to back as I move forward to check the situation and find the man deceased and eaten mostly from the waist up. No way to identify him, and this day is slipping away. I don't think it's safe to leave Brian here alone, so I break out the sat phone and I call the CO and report in that it's for Dogman and we are on the trail. He asked if I want another agent to join us and Ellis can hear our conversation. I tell him no, that me and Ellis have this, and the CO says, are you sure? I say, yes, sir. Hoping in my heart he can just get 1. That's all I'm asking for, 1. That made his spirits rise that much higher. Someone was putting some faith into this young man, and maybe this would make him grow. Only time would tell, though. It was now 1500 hours, and he had just got the coordinates called in. And they tell Brian to tell us to go on, and they should be there around midnight, and that he could guard the body and then help get it out of there. They were sending 6 men in. I told Ellis to make camp. We would hunt tomorrow and tomorrow night. We all got comfortable 40 yards away from the body with a little better view should they return during the night. We laughed, cut up, and before dark I changed my shirt. Brian said, what the heck got a hold of you? Ellis jerked around, and I stood there for a moment, and then I put my shirt back on and told him a werewolf. He said, they're real? I answered and spent the next hour telling him about the Wyoming hunt. Ellis's eyes, you could tell that he would never make it if he went up against a werewolf. He would definitely lose. You could see it in his eyes, his face. I knew this now, but I had to continue down this road with him, and knew I had to protect him and get him back to Virginia just so the CO could fire him. But the boy would at least be alive. I knew he could fool me, and we would find out soon. The dark settled in on us, along with the clouds as well. You couldn't see the body unless you were about 20 yards away. Everyone had picked the spot to sleep, but I moved both Brian and Ellis side by side so I could keep an eye on them and watch the body, watch the trail, all from one spot. Didn't seem like it took them long to drift off to sleep. I was supposed to wake one of them up by 0100 to take over the watch, but I wasn't going to trust myself to either one of these two. Also, the other 6 came in at 23:15, and I put them all where I could watch and told them to rest well. I was used to doing what I was doing for days on end, so they just made a little noise as possible and went to bed. Woke everyone up the next morning, and someone else broke up coffee for everyone, and we all drank till everyone was full. Then cleaned up the area, and 2 men went down to take pictures of the body. They were with the sheriff's office. They had me to point out the footprints, the cleanest ones I could find. He was missing one of his shoes, and we all spread out that day and never did find that shoe, but I tracked him to that spot, and he still had 2 shoes on the whole way there. After they got everything they said they needed, they put the body in a body bag and started back with Brian. He tried to continue on with us, but I reminded him of our early conversation, and he shook my hand and off he went, giving me his number to call when we returned. He would pick us up. I thanked him again, and myself and Ellis were off to do what we were here to do. 11:20, and we could no longer see or hear them, and we start to track. I'm on point with Ellis, maybe 8 yards beyond, and every once in a great while we'd hear a lone howl, but nothing close to the woods. They don't go silent either, but there's a strange feeling in the air. Nothing I can put my finger on, and nothing I'm worried about. Just something's there. It's now 16:20, and the woods go totally quiet in one step. Everything shut up. I throw up my fist and put him on the ground in a defensive position, and we are both scanning the woods, but neither of us are able to see anything or hear anything at this time. I hold us in this position for as long as the woods remain quiet, which is probably at least 3, maybe 4 hours before the woods come back to life. I stand up and approach Ellis. He asks what just had happened. He didn't recognize the silence, so we back up about 100 yards. This kid has me on edge, and I don't want to move forward with him like this. So I tell him to bed down. I'll take the first watch again, and he has caught on that I don't intend on sleeping any at night, and if I sleep during the day, it'll only be short naps at that. He starts building a fire, and I said, "No fire tonight. Sorry, just roll out your sack and get in." As he lied down, he asked, "Had I made you mad, sir? Have I done something so terribly wrong that I can't continue?" I said, "No, Ellis. There are some things that you will have to address with the CO that could get yourself killed, and if you have a second agent with you, get them killed as well, if you don't get something done about it. And some things are just plain simple mistakes that you can fix on your own, and some you can't fix. Get some rest. You're going to need it tomorrow." So I stood guard through the night again without waking Ellis up, and the forest going quiet, and then opening back up again, back and forth throughout the night, howls that sounded no more than 100 yards away. Me tucked away beside Ellis, maybe 7 foot, just in case anything came in close or smelled us out. I was ready for whatever they threw at me this night. I was ready, but again, they never came for us. And why didn't they come? They knew we were here. Why? Here came the sun, so I put the coffee on just to see if my talk had done any good. I didn't wake Ellis up. I actually thought about leaving him in his sack and moving on without him, but That wouldn't be right, but I did use the time to call in and talk to the CO and give him a heads up on everything that was wrong so far, and he asked for my recommendations. I said a very stern write-up and assign him to only one type of cryptid, that we will make him a specialist of Dogman. That is all he will deal with is Dogmen. The CO was agreeable to that if Ellis would be. We would have to see if he was agreeable to that. He arose finally at 10:30 hours, and you could see the guilt in his eyes. He started to speak, but I held up my hand. I didn't want to hear any more from him. He ducked his head and put his things away and rose, drank a cup of coffee, and we were off. We were in some very large rocks that had a lot of overhangs, and we had to check most of them as they had to be looked into. Ellis was not saying very much today. He knew after the talk I had given him I was expecting more out of him, and that he had let me down. I don't know where he came up with these hours like he did, but that's what he had in his head. I kept telling him to get his head in the game. Something was wrong, and he kept waving me off. I was hoping he was right, but that nagging gut feeling kept coming back over and over, and the silence would come and go, and it's like it was toying with us, but I was not going to let it win. No way, no how. So now we are down in some deep rock, and we're not getting out before dark. I tell him to put on his night vision goggles. We are going to hunt through the night. So we are both getting ready for the night. I can see the sun still has some shine up above. So we sit down for 1 hour, and I get me a little rest, and that little rest means a lot right now. I open my eyes 55 minutes later. He's amazed that I could do that without any kind of alarm. I tell him you need to train your body to do such things. So we are up and working in the dark now, just at the bottom edges of these giant boulders, and some openings in the bottoms of them, looking for signs to see if they're using any of these natural openings for cover. It's now 2200 hours, and he said he has to change the batteries in his night vision. So we find a good place to do this, and it's done in less than 2 or 3 minutes, and we're back up and operating. Time seems to be dragging, and everything is just so still. It's now 0025 hours, and Ellis says his bladder needs a break. I agree, and we both stop about 30 feet apart and relieve ourselves, and he comments that we are never going to catch up with these dogmen, and I say we will know soon enough. I started to say something, and his hand flew up, and we both dropped to our kneeling position and began listening very intently. It was coming to my right and ahead of me. I then glanced at Ellis to see where he was to my left, maybe 8 yards in, maybe 3 yards behind my location while this noise is getting closer. Then the noise just quit, no movement anywhere, and it remained this way for several minutes. We held our position. I glanced over to make sure Ellis was not moving any, and he was holding like he was supposed to. Then there was some small noises and movement, and I trained my rifle to this area of the brush where it seems to be coming from, and there was an opening there big enough to get through. I was worried about Ellis. I could see his eyes, and they were as large as saucers, and he didn't have his rifle in ready position either. I knew that they were going to get ready and come, but from where, I was uncertain about that. I thought I knew, but seldom does Dogman hit you head on, mostly from the sides and rear, it was covered, so they had 2 sides, and the front, but Ellis was not looking to his left, and we had not even went over the shooting pattern when we got down to business. I was hoping he would remember what he had been taught to try to let all targets get into view before we open up on them, but sometimes this will not work, and you do what has to be done at that point. Then came this loud snap, and there they came from 3 directions, and I'm seeing coming from all directions, and know in my head instantly that there are far more than 4. I dropped number 1, then number 2, but they came from straight in front of me now. I have Dogman closing in on me from the right side, getting very close, and still more coming from the front. Ellis hasn't even shot yet. I can't think about Ellis right now. I shoot number 3 to my right, number 4 to my right, and scream at the same time, "Ellis, get in this fight. We're going to die, both of us." I wheel around and kill number 5 right in front of me, maybe 3 yards away, and I glance at Ellis. And he's just standing there staring at me. His whole chest is missing. I start to lunge for him, and I am cut off by a pair of dogmen. It's like they're grinning at me with the blood and intestines hanging from their hands. I raise my rifle and start to scream and bust both in the head. And down goes number 6, along with number 7. At this point, I think that I am going to die. Too many dogmen left to fight. As I turn to face the remaining dogman, one dives and knocks my rifle from my hands and rakes my right thigh with its left hand and claws, and takes his right hand and claws and sticks them into my stomach very low. I was still able to pull my pistol, put it against its head, and pull the trigger. This action blew his right hand out of my stomach, and I took a foot and pushed him away. I glance at Ellis, and he's on his knees, about to fall, but I still have 3 more dogmen to deal with, and when I try to stand, I fall backwards into the brush, which helps hide me some from the dogman, and they have to come straight on more or less now to get me. Then they don't all rush me at once. One at a time they come, one at a time. I let them get close, and when they do, I shoot each one single shot, take each one down. And finally, after all the smoke had cleared, I realized I had killed 11 dogmen. I got up and made my way over to where Ellis was on the ground, and he was just barely hanging on to life. He asked if he was going to die. I gave him an honest answer. I told him that if it was his time to die, he would, and if it wasn't, it wasn't. I'd get him out of there, but I knew in my heart I would never get him out alive. He held my hand and explained his parents had no money to bury him, and he didn't take any insurance. I told him not to worry. If something was to happen to him, I would take care of the funeral expenses. He died seconds later. I knew in my heart I was going to make Ellis a hero so everyone would never say anything bad about him again. I looked for our radios and couldn't find either one to call for an extraction. So I figured I was going to have to carry Ellis out, because we don't leave our fellow Americans behind. I placed him inside his sleeping bag and bandaged my wound, wrapped him in his sack and loaded my rifle and pistol, and carried 1 extra mag for each just in case. Finally, got him across my shoulder, and I was starting to consider this is going to be a 6-day trip out. The first day, I may have traveled 3 miles carrying Ellis's body, if I made it that far. The woods kept falling into silence, and I worried there was more dogman, and they were following me. I was now tired, hurt, and alone. Tonight I was thinking that I knew I had killed 11 dogmen that day, and had the proof to back it up. So what I planned on doing was going to make Ellis a hero so everyone would shut up about him. I knew everyone would believe me except the CO, and if I put it in writing, he would have to challenge me on it. and he was not here, so I didn't see that happening. He didn't want to draw any undue attention his way. I awoke early the next morning, and man, was I hurting. Sure, I could have found either one of our radios, so I could have called for a pickup. I tried to walk for 8 hours, but things were not working out too well for me doing this, actually. And I was about to leave Ellis's body for some animals to chew on. It was already where his parents could not have an open coffin. This day, in 8 hours, I figured I had traveled maybe 5 miles. I was very weak, and the following morning, there was a slight breeze and very cloudy, sprinkling rain, not heavy rain, just enough to get you wet. And that sleeping bag his body was in was taking on water pretty fast and making it extra heavy. And the ground was slicker, and by the end of this third day I knew where I was, but I still at least had 1 day of walking to get to where we found the man's body. If everything went good, I bedded down at night in the woods, whereas they were still quiet. No sound, no movement, nothing. So I decided to sit up for a while. Something's feeling bad again. I cannot put my finger on it. If you can't see it, you can't shoot it and fix it. And this is about the place the first time I had such a bad feeling. I'm lying on top of my sleeping bed, plenty warm and everything. Something snapped, and I mean it's way too close for me to ever grab either one of my guns. The rifle's on the ground beside me, the pistol's in my holster. And I mean less than 2 feet from my head to where it snapped lightly. I started to turn and it pounced on me. About a 30, maybe 40-pound cougar cub scared the bejesuses out of me. I thought I had. After about 4 or 5 minutes, it took off. I don't know where the mom or dad was, but I was glad I didn't have to find out. Finally, I dozed off and had my first nightmare. I could hear Ellis calling my name, and I rise up to see him sitting on a rock maybe 10 feet away. Chest ripped out, and he's asking me over and over again why I didn't try harder to save him. And finally, I snapped to it. It's still dark with no sign of Ellis, but I'm soaking wet with sweat again. Cold now. I'm exposed to the elements. I have to get inside my sleeping bag, but never went back to sleep. Daybreak comes, and I'm off again, trying with everything I have in me to make some extra time today, and make it to where we found the body of the man. My body is screaming, no more, no more. I sit down beside the tree and wake up. It's dark. Not sure. I made it on this day and what time it was. 4th day, and it's night once again. Nightmares return 3 different times. I fall asleep, and each time I awake to the same dream. The last time I looked in every direction and saw Ellis, so I no longer slept that night. After the 3rd attempt. Day 5, up with the sun. New problem. Rigor mortis has set in. Buzzards are overhead. An awful way. He is flat as a board. No bend in his body whatsoever. I have to get Ellis at just the right spot to be able to carry him. Terribly hard to balance. Nothing to eat. I have to find water today. My canteen is almost dry now as well, so I have to keep my eye open for water. Wishing for lots of things right now. Tried not to sleep last night, but fell asleep sitting up twice and had nightmares. Now, when I get back to Virginia, I'll need to see someone to get some help and make these nightmares go away somehow. Trying to conserve my water and not drink any today. No food. And going to be tomorrow before I reach the plateau. Where are all the people when you need them? I never can answer my own questions when needed to. Day 6, ran out of water last night. Haven't had any food in 6 days now. Have not even seen anything to shoot at. Getting weaker by the day now. And I sure hate to leave Ellis up here, but I might have to go and get help. I'm gonna get to the top of the plateau in a couple more hours or so. Maybe, just maybe, today it'll be a good day. I have made it just past the place where we found the man, which means once I top this plateau, it will all be flat and maybe just a little downhill from here to the road. From here, maybe 2 more days tops. I got up this morning to get started and fell and hit my right knee on a rock from the fall and let go of a couple cuss words that didn't help my situation at the time, but I let them roll. I was able to get Ellis on my shoulder again, and the rigger had let go from his body, and once again draped over my shoulder, we were off. Seems like the easiest day of carrying the young agent yet. I was making good time, and my right leg started to cramp up on me. I soon found a place to lay young Ellis on the ground and check my leg. Looking around and seeing no one, I dropped my pants to inspect my leg. My right leg had started to swell some, so back on with the pants and take an hour rest or so. Wake myself up and stand up, and the shooting pain goes through my leg like nothing I had felt. Great, an infection from the wound. I have no clean bandages. My shirt is soaked with his blood and bodily fluids from carrying him. My pants are the same way. Nothing to get clean strips off of. I then turn my attention to my sleeping bag, and there are some clean strips that I can use to redress my wounds. I spend the next hour and a half tearing strips to redo my wounds, knowing it's all downhill from here. Next thing, I take the stomach bandages off, and these wounds look like they have healed up and don't appear to have any infection around them. That makes me feel better. I get it dressed back up, and I feel better about myself, and then I drop the pants again and start to unwrap my leg, and I soon realize that I am in a whole lot of trouble myself. When I get it all unwrapped and look, it was oozing green pus from just about every inch of the wound. I was trying to figure out what to clean it with and finally spotted some moss. So I headed for it, and the pain was almost unbearable trying to walk. Knew I had to get this wrapped back up and headed on out to the road once more, or I would stiffen up and not be able to move. I had to push through this. Once again, it was time to get him up on the shoulder and go for the road with Ellis. I was going to keep my word to him and make him a hero. I was able to get him onto my shoulder with some trouble and went on till it was totally dark, laid him down, and got what was left out of my bag and laid it out and laid myself on top of it. I sure was hungry and thirsty at this time, and my body felt like it was shutting down. My leg is throbbing, so I didn't think that sleep would come easy, but it did. So did the nightmares. After I had awoke 2 times, and I figured it's not even midnight yet. Let's start a watch. The far west horizon, and I think I can see cars on the interstate, but there's no sound from them. And I realize there is no sound around me. For the first time, I notice the smell from Ellis's body, and I start to regain some composure and take in my surroundings, knowing that something is on our scent, a natural predator. For how long have I not been paying attention to this? Is it the cougar's parents close? And if so, where? I brighten up, start looking around, trying to find anything that doesn't look right, and chance movement that I can pick up on anything. Come on, Victor. You're better than this. Where's your mind? Just have to get through tonight and tomorrow. You will be at the road, I tell myself. But not. The silence hurts my ears. It's almost even scary to me. It's that still and that quiet. I gaze back to the west horizon, and I see no lights from cars or the interstate now, but I know where I am, and at least tomorrow it will be downhill and flat walking. Soon I had went to sleep again due to the tank being empty, and suffered through not waking up from a nightmare this time and sleeping through it. I woke up and it was almost daylight. Nothing had happened to his body after I had fallen asleep, and nothing happened to me. So I waited for the sun to get up before I left, and warmed me as I was very stiff and I was having trouble moving, not able to stand up yet. I was giving myself pep talks mentally and knew something was wrong, so I stripped out of the last of the strips on my bag and checked my leg one more time. It was looking worse today than yesterday, I thought to myself. I've got to get out of here. The buzzards were even lightning near me and Ellis's body on the ground, but I had to get up and put his 100 or so pound body on my shoulder and get moving, so they would have to leave us alone. Finally, we were up and on our way, and it's our best day ever. We had traveled, believe it or not. I had found water early in the day, but I only filled the canteen and didn't wash the wound because I had no steri strips to put back on it. So I didn't undress it, and knowing tomorrow I'd be able to get help. I had no bag to lie on, and my leg, since I have sat down, feels like it's swelling up, but I drift off to sleep, and after a little while I awake when I hear some type of noise. I only open my eyes, no movement from me, just my eyes to see if I can spot anything. Nothing, I know. I heard something, so I start to turn my head and hear someone's pet dog. I must be close to a home somewhere. It's got a collar on, and it's friendly, but I have nothing to write with, nothing to put a note on it anywhere. But this, at least, means that tomorrow we will get out of here anyway. I know I'm only like maybe 5 miles being out of here now at the most, and I'm excited. And then the dog just takes off running, gone in the same direction that I'll be walking out of in the morning. And back to sleep I go, not worrying about anything at this moment, just the rest. Then again, not long after I went to sleep, I was awoken by the same noise, something coming into the area, and I watch, and here comes that same dog. And about 5 minutes later, a second dog, a black lab, comes in, sits down, and has a beacon collar of some sorts. It's flashing, and they are both barking about every 10 minutes. After another hour goes by, I see flashlights in the distance, and know nothing. And knowing who they are, and not knowing who they are, try to hide and have my rifle ready just in case it's someone's land I happen to be on, and they don't want to listen to reason, but these dogs react to them. Soon they approach and find the sleeping bag, and I can see it's Brian and 5 other men. I call out to him, and he comes over and says he figured I was overdue, and that good or bad, he and 5 more wardens were coming in to try to find us. He then asked about Ellis, and so I made him a hero right then and there, but said we don't want this to go on paper. I told him what was left back there, and that there was a fully automatic weapon back there also that needed to be retrieved at some point. Oh yeah, and the handheld sat phones, if they could be found. I told him where I put the rifle, but I couldn't find the radios, and that I needed to get to the hospital. He then saw my wounds and went into a different gear about getting me out. He was going to leave Ellis's body and take me out, and go back and get him. But I explained this was the 7th day and I wasn't leaving him behind on this point. They could get me on their feet and I would walk, and they could carry Ellis out on a stretcher they had brought with them. I asked how far it was to being out of there. Brian said 2 miles, if that. One of the men had built up a fire and stretched out a bag for me to lie on, and I told him I would ruin it if I lied on it. He laughed and said it would give him an excuse to buy a new and better one. I went ahead and lied down, and they feed me some groceries, some coffee, and the coffee sure is good. The coffee sure was good. I believe I could have drank in a whole pot. While we had been talking, 3 of them put the sleeping bag that I had Ellis's body in inside of a body bag. The odor was immediately gone, except what was all over me. I smelled like death had just warmed over me. Early, just as the sun rose, 5 men lifted me onto a gurney and started for the road. A large man took lead with Ellis draped over his shoulder. When we arrived, the coroner was waiting. So was the ambulance to take me to the hospital. I spoke with the coroner and told him that we were jumped by a pack of probably 20 wild dog, and that we had killed the majority, and that any testing that he needed to do needed to be done on me, and to turn Ellis John's body over to how come from either the CIA or the FBI to retrieve his body to take to his parents for burial. So cause of death, animal attack, and problem taken care of by 2 agents with a loss of 1 agent. And I said, that is correct. He went away shaking his head, clearly not happy at getting told what to put on his death certificate without examining the body. But he did as he was told. I called my CO from Brian's phone and reported what had happened just verbally, and called me a liar, but said he would notify the family, and when the arrangements were made, he would find out the financial details for me so I could pay for it for the family. Told him I'd fill out my paperwork just as soon as I was out of the hospital, and was able to hike back and retrieve the automatic rifle and try and find the 2 missing stat phones. They then took me to the hospital and began to work on my wounds. They bathed them and soaked them in a special solution bath that I would soak in twice a day in a whirlpool-type bathtub to get everything out of the wound. On the 3rd day, they finally sewed it back up, 344 stitches in my leg. One of the nurses was nice enough to go and purchase some clothes with my card and bring it back to me. Brian and his wife offered me a place to stay and a vehicle to drive back and forth to the doctor's. Most of the time, his wife took care of me because I didn't know where the offices were located. It finally came to the day the stitches had to come out, and I was going back to get the other weapon. Brian decided he was going to join me on this trip, and I tell him that after I let him see them, that I'm going to have to erase his memory from this. He laughs and says it's fine. We talk, and I realize we actually could use this guy on our team. I start to see just how much he really knows. I talk to the CO about him and ask if we could make an exception. He asks which one, and I say I don't know yet. Let me qualify him, and I will let you know. He may not be interested in moving all the way across the country. I asked him if he'd be interested in working along with me and doing what I do. He asked, what do I do? I told him I hunt monsters, and he smiled again and said to show him first, and then we'll talk. We are both in good shape, but I am weak, and it takes 2 days and almost a half to get to where we fought the Dogmen. I pick up the rifle and find my radio in the brush where I was knocked back into the brush so deep when the one took a dive at me and got my leg and stomach. Must have hit the radio and knocked it free. Brian has a cloth over his mouth looking at what remains of the dogmen and says, "How on earth do these things actually live here among us?" He asked to see one of the rifles. I handed him Ellis's, and he saw the mag is numbered 1, and he opened his pack and found 11 more mags in his pack numbering 2 to 12 and asked if he wore a vest. I answered he did. How many mags were in his vest? And I said it was ripped away. I couldn't say for sure, and he showed me the numbered clips. Brian figured out that he never shot. Said he didn't even have any reloads in his vest for the fight. Finally, right at dark, found his radio 50-some odd yards to the left of where his body was on the ground when the final swipe was made at his chest, and ripped it out. Threw everything in one direction. We made it out in 2 days. I asked Brian again about working with us. He said he was working to think about it, and I got Lewis on the phone, and he took care of Brian's memory for a short time period. We parted ways. I never heard from him till almost 8 years later. I get a call. I recognize his voice, and he tells me about his wife and kids. They have 2 kids now, and he can't leave because he has to help raise his kids with his parents. His wife had been killed in a robbery for like $39. She was killed because she wouldn't hand over her money. And that, my friends, was the very first hunt Victor ever shared with us. I've got a couple that no one has heard. I got one, actually, that I haven't even read myself yet, which I'm going to incorporate in what I was talking about earlier. So, I'm just going to let you guys know that I do miss him. He was a good friend of mine. Full of crazy answers when you asked him crazy questions. Anyway, it is 3 a.m, and I am going to head off to sleep. Please, everyone, practice kindness, and may the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life.